This offseason, more than ever, have we seen teams have to navigate the ever so complicated salary cap. Nate Schmidt to the Canucks, Ryan Murray and Andreas Johnsson to New Jersey, Paul Stastny to Winnipeg, Marcus Nudavara to Florida. All these players had the potential to be stars on their new squad. Except, they were all traded for virtually nothing. Cap dumps. Valuable players unloaded because of salary cap implications. And in many cases, cap dumps have completely blown up in the face of the dumping team. In today's video, we will be going over salary cap dumps that completely blew up in the dumping team's face. So comment down below your team's worst contract and whether or not it should be dumped, and press subscribe for some more awesome hockey content. Let's get straight into this video. We will start with Riley Smith, and this cap dump was extremely confusing. Traded on June 21st, 2017 on Vegas expansion draft day, I feel like some people tend to forget how exactly Vegas acquired Smith. Because no, it wasn't for expansion draft considerations, as the Panthers shockingly left Jonathan Marchessault unprotected so that they could protect Alex freaking Petrovic. So, how did Vegas get him? Well, the Florida Panthers would unload Riley Smith for a 4th round pick. And keep in mind, just 1 year prior, Smith put up a very impressive 25 goals, he plays a very impressive defensive game, and is a very valuable asset. And he was stolen by Vegas for a 4th round pick just so Florida could save $5 million per season. A very absurd cap dump that would prove to be a horrible decision, as Riley Smith in Vegas has been a star. 60 points in 67 games in his first season, he's a tremendous playoff performer, and at $5 million per season for a 25-30 goal scorer who also plays a great defensive game, I would consider a $5 million AAV to be a great contract, and the exact opposite of a contract you just dump for a 4th round pick. And trades like this, combined with some terrible contract decisions, would ultimately get Dale Talon fired from the Panthers after a decade of being the general manager. Next, we have the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Hawks ran into a great and bad issue. After the franchise had so much success after winning 3 Stanley Cups with one core group of players, unfortunately, success means you will have to overpay certain players or let them walk to free agency. And that was exactly the case with Brian Bickell, an extremely good bottom 6 player who provided supplementary scoring and more importantly played with grit and was a massive piece to the 2013 Cup win, which in return would earn him a 4-year, $16 million contract. A massive price to pay for a bottom 6 winger. And of course, a contract they would soon regret, as Bickell would rapidly regress, and with players like Artemi Panarin joining the system, the Hawks felt desperate to clear some cap. And so they did. Because even though Bickell had a modest $4 million contract, which keep in mind, was entering the final season of that contract, they would unload Bickell to the Carolina Hurricanes, and the price they'd have to pay is a 21-year-old Teuvo Teravainen for 2 second-round picks that did not turn into NHL players. And yes, Carolina did have to incur 1 season of Bickell at $4 million, but they got Teuvo Teravainen, who has developed into a legitimate superstar as he's a point-per-game scorer, very good defensively, and an elite power play specialist. A massive price to pay to unload Brian Bickell in his 1-year, $4 million contract. And this is a prime example on why you don't dump cap. Next, we have Patrick Marleau. And during the 2017 NHL offseason, Toronto would make a massive statement, signing a 38-year-old Marleau to a 3-year, $6.25 million AAV contract. And of course, in hindsight, this signing was doomed to fail. That much money for someone who will be 40 by the end of the contract is not a bet I would take. Now, I do think it's very important to emphasize that Marleau was a great mentor to many of the Leafs, but again, this contract was signed basically knowing it would be costly down the line. And it was exactly that, because 2 years into his 3-year contract, Patrick Marleau at the age of 40 would have to be shipped off to Carolina for the purpose of contract buyout. And in return, the Canes received a 2020 first round pick that turned into the 13th overall pick and a very strong draft class. And the Canes would draft Seth Jarvis, an extremely talented winger who put up 42 goals in only 58 games last season. And of course, this was still very recent and we don't know the outcome, but if Jarvis does develop into a star, this trade will haunt Toronto for years. Next, we have Nate Schmidt. And yes, again, this is an extremely recent transaction, but I honestly feel like most people don't understand the scope of this complete cap dump. Because if you take a deeper look into Nate Schmidt's advanced stats and trajectory, Schmidt is a 1B to a defenseman. He's much more than just a solid top 4 guy. He can drive the transition game, kills penalties, power play, he can do it all. And to give you some perspective on how insane this cap dump was, here's a Travis Hamonic trade that took place 2 years ago. The market value was a first and second round pick. Tyson Barrie, the price was Kadri. Jacob Trouba for a first round pick, and Neil Pionk. The list goes on, and analytically, Schmidt is a far better defenseman than those who I just mentioned, all of which fetched a massive return on the market. So the fact that Vegas was willing to give him up for virtually nothing just goes to show how extreme cap dump scenarios can be. Because if this trade occurred mid-season or even at the deadline, Schmidt would have surely fetched a return of a high-end prospect, first-round draft pick, or a good top 6 winger. Definitely a lot different than just a third-round pick. And lastly, we have PK Subban. And I thought I would include Subban because he is a great example of the potential downside of a cap dump. Because back in 2016, we would see the definition of a blockbuster trade. As Shea Weber would be traded 1-for-1 for PK Subban, a trade that would shock the entire hockey world. Because at the time, they were both arguably top 10 defensemen, so to see them get swapped, it was insanity. However, on a completely stacked Nashville defensive core, Subban just wouldn't be the same player. His first 2 years he was a stud, but in his third year, he would see pretty massive regression, and considering that he has a monster 8-year, $9 million AAV contract, and the fact that Subban was on one of the best defensive cores in the NHL, he was expendable. So on day 2 of the 2019 NHL draft, Subban would be unloaded on the Devils for some prospects and second round picks. A seemingly slam dunk trade for both sides, as Nashville now had an extra $9 million to spend on forwards, and the Devils acquired him for far below market value. Except, because PK Subban was carrying such a monster contract, there was far more downside if Subban didn't perform. And unfortunately, Subban this season, analytically, is having the worst season in his entire career. Now, of course, it is important to realize that he is playing on a rebuilding Devils team, and in 1 or 2 years, we could see Subban get back to his elite level, but the Subban trade highlights the massive risk a team takes when acquiring a massive contract, even if the trade was viewed as a massive steal at the time. And so the moral of the story is, even though unloading a bad contract seems like a no-brainer, doing so comes with a price. A price that may turn out to be a first-round pick that turns into a star, or perhaps a prospect that develops into a stud. But anyways guys, thank you for the ongoing support. We just passed 32,000 subscribers. I'm feeling pretty under the weather today, so hopefully it doesn't affect my video too much. So press subscribe for some more awesome content. I hope all you guys are doing well. See you guys later.